At my parents' 40th anniversary, my sister took the mic. To mom and dad for tolerating their second daughter, the college dropout in their basement. Guests laugh, pointing at me. I forced a smile, hands shaking. 2 months later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. They didn't know I was planning. Now I'm successful, and they beg. My revenge is my rise. Their mockery fueled me. Man, I still can't believe that night went down the way it did. Picture this. I'm standing in my parents' backyard wearing my one decent dress from Target, watching my older sister absolutely roast me in front of like 50 people. The whole setup was straight out of a movie. White tablecloths, those fancy string lights from Home Depot, and mom's good china that only comes out for special occasions. The whole family was there, plus neighbors, old friends, co-workers, basically everyone who mattered in my parents' world. I'd been dreading this night for weeks, not gonna lie. Family gatherings always made me feel like the odd one out, but this one felt different. This was their big milestone, and I wanted to show up and be supportive, you know? My sister Sarah had been the golden child since day one. She graduated summa cum laude from Stanford, landed some hotshot job at a tech company in Silicon Valley, drives a BMW, lives in this sick apartment overlooking the bay. Meanwhile, I'm the family disappointment who dropped out of college after 2 years because I couldn't handle the pressure and the debt was crushing me. For the past year, I'd been living in my parents' basement, working at a local coffee shop called Bean There, trying to figure out what to do with my life. Not exactly the success story they were hoping for when they had 2 daughters, if you catch my drift. The evening started off normal enough. I helped mom set up the decorations, arrange the photo displays showing 4 decades of their marriage. Dad was grilling burgers and hot dogs on his trusty Weber, cracking jokes with the neighbors. Sarah showed up fashionably late in her Tesla, looking like she stepped out of a magazine spread. Everyone was mingling, sharing stories, laughing at old memories. I was actually having an okay time, chatting with my cousin Jake about his new job at the Ford plant when Dad called for everyone's attention. He thanked everyone for coming, got a little emotional talking about how blessed he felt to have such an amazing family and friends. Then he handed the microphone to Sarah, saying she wanted to share something special. That's when everything went sideways. Sarah took that mic like she was accepting an Oscar. She started off sweet, talking about what incredible parents we had, how they'd always supported both their daughters no matter what. I'm thinking, okay, this is nice. Maybe she's actually being genuine for once. Then she pivoted. I especially want to thank mom and dad for their endless patience, she said, and I could hear the shift in her tone. Particularly for tolerating their second daughter. You know, the college dropout living in their basement. The crowd erupted in laughter. I felt my face burning as people turned to look at me, some pointing, others just staring with that mixture of pity and amusement. My hands started shaking and I had to grip my plastic cup of Pepsi just to keep from dropping it. But Sarah wasn't done. While I was building my career in Silicon Valley, she continued, our parents never once complained about having a 23-year-old barista as their other daughter. They just smile and tell people she's finding herself. Isn't that sweet? More laughter. I wanted to disappear into the ground. My parents were smiling, but I could see the discomfort in their eyes. They didn't know how to handle this either. I forced myself to smile and even clapped along, because what else could I do? Making a scene would just prove her point about me being the family drama queen. So I stood there, dying inside, while everyone had a good laugh at my expense. The rest of the night was a blur. People kept coming up to me with these patronizing comments like, don't worry, you'll figure it out eventually, or college isn't for everyone. I stuck it out until they cut the cake, then made some excuse about having to work early and got out of there. Update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support in the comments. Some of you asked what happened immediately after. Honestly, I went straight home and cried for like 2 hours. But something shifted that night. I realized I was done being the family punching bag. The question is, what would you do in my situation? How do you prove someone wrong when they've already written you off? I spent the next few days feeling sorry for myself, scrolling through Instagram, looking at Sarah's perfect life posts, feeling like garbage. But then something clicked. I was lying on my bed in that basement, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, when I realized something. I was actually good at things. I just hadn't been pursuing the right things. See, while everyone thought I was just messing around after dropping out, I'd actually been teaching myself graphic design and web development. I'd started with some free courses on YouTube, then moved onto more serious stuff. I'd even done a few small projects for friends. Nothing major, just logos for their bands or simple websites for their small businesses. The problem was I treated it like a hobby instead of a career. I was scared to put myself out there, scared to fail again like I did in college. But Sarah's little speech lit a fire under me. I was done playing small. I started by creating a proper portfolio website, stayed up until 3 in the morning for weeks, perfecting every detail. I reached out to local businesses, offering to redesign their websites for cheap just to build up my client base. I created social media accounts to showcase my work, started networking with other designers online. The breakthrough came about 6 weeks after the anniversary party. I landed a contract with a local restaurant chain. Nothing huge, just updating their websites and creating some marketing materials. But it paid more than I made in 2 months at the coffee shop. Word started spreading. I guess people liked my work because I started getting referrals. A boutique needed a rebrand, a law firm wanted a new website, a startup needed logo design, and marketing materials. I was working 18-hour days, but I loved every minute of it. I kept my job at Bean There for a while, just to have steady income while I built up my freelance business. But within 3 months, I was making more from design work than from slinging lattes. I gave my 2 weeks notice and went full-time freelance. Update. Guys, I can't believe how much has changed. I went from serving coffee to running my own design business in just a few months. The money is getting real now. I'm actually making more than I ever thought possible. But here's the thing that's really tripping me out. My family still has no idea what I'm doing. They think I'm still just figuring things out. Should I tell them or wait until the perfect moment? What would make the biggest impact? The real game changer came when I landed a contract with a major client. I can't name them because of NDAs, but let's just say it's a company everyone knows. They needed a complete digital overhaul. Website, mobile app, marketing materials, the whole 9 yards. The contract was worth more than I'd made in my entire life up to that point. I had to hire subcontractors to help with the workload. Suddenly, I wasn't just a freelancer anymore. I was running a legitimate business. I incorporated, got a business license, rented a small office space downtown. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. The best part was the silence from my family. They had no idea what was happening. They still thought I was the basement-dwelling dropout who couldn't get her life together. Sarah would still make little comments during family dinners about how some people take longer to mature, or how not. Everyone is cut out for success. I just smiled and nodded, knowing what was coming. About 4 months after the anniversary party, I was featured in a local business magazine as one of the 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch. The article talked about how I'd built a 6-figure design business from nothing, how I was helping local companies compete in the digital marketplace. They even mentioned my plans to expand into consulting and possibly hire full-time employees. My phone started ringing off the hook. Old friends from high school, distant relatives, people I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted to catch up and see how I was doing. It was pretty transparent that they'd seen the article, but the call that really got me was from Sarah. "Hey," she said, and I could hear the forced casualness in her voice. "I saw that article about you. That's really cool. I had no idea you were doing all that." I almost laughed. "Yeah, well, I've been pretty busy. I was actually wondering if you might want to grab coffee sometime. I've been thinking about maybe starting a side business, and I could use some advice from someone who's actually done it." The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. The same sister who'd publicly humiliated me was now asking for my help. "I'll have to check my schedule," I told her. "I'm pretty booked up these days." Which was true. My calendar was packed with client meetings, consultations, and project deadlines. I'd also started speaking at local business events, sharing my story of building a company from scratch. The kid who dropped out of college was now being invited to talk to MBA students about entrepreneurship. The requests for my time kept coming. Dad called to ask if I could help his friend with a website. Mom wanted to know if I could design new business cards for her book club. Relatives I barely knew were reaching out on Facebook, asking for family discounts on design work. Everyone who'd written me off was suddenly very interested in being part of my success story. Update. Okay, everyone, this is wild. Remember how I said my phone wouldn't stop ringing? Well, it's gotten even crazier. My sister actually asked me for business advice, and my parents are now bragging about me to their friends. The same people who laughed at me 6 months ago are now asking for favors. I'm torn between feeling vindicated and just being annoyed. How do you handle family who only show up when you're successful? Also, I have one more big reveal coming that's going to blow everyone's mind. The ultimate moment came at my parents' Christmas party. Same setup as the anniversary. Family, friends, neighbors, the whole crew. But this time, I wasn't the basement-dwelling dropout. I showed up in a new Honda Civic I'd bought with cash, wearing a dress that actually fit properly, carrying myself with confidence I'd never had before. The whispers started immediately. People had heard about my business, seen the magazine article, maybe even visited my website. The energy was completely different from 6 months earlier. During dinner, Dad stood up to make a toast. He talked about how proud he was of both his daughters, how amazed he was by what I'd accomplished. Then he asked me to share a little about my business. I stood up, looked around the room at all the faces that had watched me get humiliated just months before, and smiled. 6 months ago, at Mom and Dad's anniversary party, I was introduced as the college dropout living in their basement, I said, my voice steady and clear. Tonight, I'm happy to report that I'm the CEO of a design company that just signed its biggest contract yet, a $250,000 deal with a Fortune 500 company. The room went dead silent. I want to thank everyone who believed in me during that difficult time, I continued, making eye contact with the people who'd actually been supportive. And I especially want to thank those who didn't, because you gave me the motivation I needed to prove you wrong. I sat down to stunned silence, then scattered applause. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. Some of the neighbors who'd laughed at me before couldn't even make eye contact. After dinner, the apologies started coming. People who'd made snide comments at the anniversary party were suddenly talking about how they'd always known I had potential, and how they were so proud to see me succeed. It was pathetic, really. Sarah cornered me by the dessert table. Look, I'm sorry about what I said at the anniversary party. I was just trying to be funny, you know? I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. You didn't hurt my feelings, I told her. Honestly. You motivated me, so thanks for that. She looked confused, maybe a little hurt. I've been trying to call you about that business advice. I know, I've been busy. But I tell you what, I'm launching a consulting division next year. If you're serious about starting a business, you can book a session through my website. I offer a family discount, only 50% more than my regular rate. Her mouth dropped open. You're going to charge me? Sarah, I'm running a business, not a charity. My time is valuable now. I'm sure you understand being a successful businesswoman yourself. The best part about success isn't the money, though that's nice. It's not even the recognition, though I won't lie and say that doesn't feel good. The best part is the confidence. For the first time in my life, I know what I'm worth. I know what I'm capable of. I don't need anyone else's approval or validation. I moved out of my parents' basement and into a nice apartment closer to downtown. I hired my first full-time employee. I started a scholarship fund for community college students studying design. I even went back to school part-time to finish my degree, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I could. These days, Sarah and I have a cordial relationship. She never did book that consulting session, but she's stopped making jokes about my career choices. My parents brag about me to their friends now, which is nice, but I don't need their approval anymore. The people who laughed at me that night, some of them became clients. Others just faded into the background. A few actually apologized sincerely, and we've rebuilt those relationships on better terms. I learned something important through all of this. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful that the people who doubted you become irrelevant to your story. They're still the same people they were 6 months ago, living the same lives, having the same conversations. Meanwhile, I'm building something bigger than I ever imagined possible. Sometimes I think about that night, standing in my parents' backyard with shaking hands, forcing a smile while everyone laughed at my expense. I'm grateful it happened. Not because I enjoyed being humiliated, but because it was the wake-up call I needed to stop playing small and start living up to my potential. The girl who was afraid to fail became the woman who was afraid to settle. And that made all the difference. Now when people ask me about my success, I tell them the truth. It started with a microphone, a cruel joke, and the decision to prove everyone wrong. But it grew into something much bigger, the realization that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined, and the courage to go out and claim it. My revenge was my rise. Their mockery fueled me, and honestly, I couldn't be more grateful for both.